It's time for Recipe of the Day. When there's a lot going on in the kitchen, I really like to keep things simple, which is how I came up with this idea for this very easy maple glaze for a ham. Really, what I wanted was to not have to cook the glaze first. I didn't want to have to dirty a saucepan and be there while there's this sugary concoction simmering on my stove. I wanted something that I could just mix together in a bowl really quickly and brush it onto the ham. And that is what this is. And it is such a delicious upgrade to your basic baked ham. Just putting this on there, it just kind of transforms it, you know? So this glaze will work on any fully cooked ham. You buy them at the grocery store. They say fully cooked on them. It is the right amount for about a 5 to 7 pound ham. But really, if your ham is bigger, it's going to be fine. If your ham is smaller, it's going to be fine. You're just going to have a little bit less or more of the sort of sauce on it. So I'm going to tell you how to make the glaze along with some substitutions for some of the ingredients as we go. And then I'm going to tell you how to use it on a ham while the ham is baking. So to make the glaze, you're mixing together 1.5 cups of maple syrup. Now that can be like pure maple syrup, or it could be whatever pancake syrup you like. And you can use honey instead if you would like. And then it's a teaspoon of cider vinegar. But since that's such a small amount, 1 teaspoon compared to like the overall batch that we're making here, if you have a different kind of vinegar, you can totally use it. I wouldn't use like balsamic vinegar, but even like white vinegar is going to be fine. You could do lemon juice. That would be fine. So yeah, you just need that little bit of acidity, right? And then it calls for 1/4 cup of spicy brown mustard. We really want the tang and that just like a little bit of spice from the mustard. You could use any kind of mustard you have really, and it's going to be just fine. I just wouldn't go with anything too spicy, and I wouldn't go with anything coarse grain. We don't want that like texture on the outside of this ham. Okay, and then there are some spices in here. It's a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/8 teaspoon of cloves, and 1/8 teaspoon of ground ginger. If you'd prefer, you can skip the 1/8 teaspoon of ground cloves and instead stud the ham with the whole cloves. A lot of people love to do that. And if you're doing that, you might even want to go a little bit lighter on the cinnamon and ginger because you're going to have quite a powerful flavor from those cloves. And I'll say that if you are not studding the ham with the whole cloves and you want other options for the seasonings, you can use 3/4 teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice instead of the cinnamon, cloves, and ginger. Or you could just go with 3/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. That is fine. Or you can do a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon and then 1/4 teaspoon of allspice instead of the cloves and ginger. We're just basically getting like 3/4 teaspoon of these like warming spices. And then finally, you're adding in 2 tablespoons of melted butter. Stir that in. It's going to seem like it's not mixing because as soon as it hits the, room temperature, even cold ingredients, it's going to kind of like form little solid pockets even, or it might. It really depends on the temperature of everything. That's totally fine. Don't worry about it. Just mix it in there as well as you can. And it's going to, of course, melt into everything as you're glazing the ham. You can actually skip the butter if you would like to. I just find that it adds a little bit of balance to the flavors. It's like that richness and just, butteriness. Okay. So like I said, you can use this on a 5 to 7 pound ham, and that can be a boneless ham, a bone-in ham, and you can do it on a spiral ham as well. If you're doing this on a spiral ham, when you're brushing it on the ham, you're going to kind of get brushing in between the slices, right? And to that point, if you are not using a spiral cut ham, I do recommend that you score the ham kind of like every inch and a half, doing cuts all the way along in one direction and then another set perpendicular. And if you see the picture for this recipe, you'll see that I've scored that. And there are 2 reasons for that. One is that when you're brushing the glaze on the ham, it's going to get down in to the ham, sort of past just the outside, so you get more of that flavor everywhere. The other reason is when you score it and then you add this like sugary coating, all those little edges that you've cut have a chance to kind of crisp a little bit, caramelize a little bit. So you're just adding that nice bit of texture to the outside of the ham, and it looks beautiful. So I guess there were 3 reasons then. Okay, so you have scored your ham and then you're putting it onto a rack in a baking pan or roasting pan, and you want to put water in the bottom of that pan, and you want to make sure that you add more water if it's evaporating away. And that is really because we're going to be adding this sugary glaze. It's going to drip down, and it's very highly concentrated in the sugar, which means that as soon as it hits that hot pan, it's going to start caramelizing to your pan and burning there. And you don't want that. The water is going to catch the glaze and it's going to be great. And those drippings, right? That you have the water there and then the little bits of glaze dripping down, juices from the ham dripping down. You can actually use those to make a delicious ham gravy. And I will link to the ham gravy recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode so you can find it, or go to cookthestory.com and search for ham gravy. It is a really great thing to serve with ham, and you'll get the really nice drippings if you use the water. But even if you're not making the gravy, you still want to do that water so that your glaze isn't burning down there. You don't want smoke in your oven, all of that. Not good, right? Okay. So you've got your probably scored ham on a rack in a roasting pan. The roasting pan has like half an inch of water. That is going into a 300-degree Fahrenheit oven until there's about an hour left of cooking time. That, of course, depends on the size of your ham. So you'll be looking at the recipe that came on the ham itself, or consulting my boneless ham recipe, bone-in ham recipe, spiral ham recipe. You'll be looking at your recipe to see how long you think that ham's going to take. And then 1 hour before it's done, you take it out of the oven and you brush it with 1/5 of the glaze. Then 15 minutes later, you do it again. You're going to do that 4 times, brushing it and then putting it back into the oven. And then you'll brush it the 4th time, put it back into the oven. Then you take it out when it has reached 145 degrees Fahrenheit internally, like as read on an instant read thermometer or probe thermometer. So you take it out that last time, you will have the last 1/5 of your glaze. Brush that on there. It's not going back into the oven. And so actually it's not going to caramelize that last bit. It's just going to kind of like heat from the heat of the ham and sort of stick on there and add this really nice glossy sheen to the outside of your ham. Then you let the ham rest for 10 minutes and then you are carving and serving a delicious maple glazed ham with that really easy no-cook maple glaze. I can't wait for you to try this. I will put the link to the recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is November 27th of 2024. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast recipe of the day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.